During a routine patrol, an F-22 Raptor pilot noticed strange activity inside a nearby support aircraft. A passenger who wasn't on the official manifest acted suspiciously, avoiding every camera and keeping her identity hidden. The morning had begun like any other high-altitude mission above the Pacific corridor. The sky was crystal clear, painted in soft shades of blue, and the horizon stretched endlessly in every direction. Captain Ryan Hale, call sign Falcon 3, guided his F-22 through the quiet airspace, his movements precise and relaxed but entirely attentive. He had flown these routes countless times, yet he never allowed routine to dull his senses. In the fighter world, complacency was the enemy, and experience taught him that trouble could appear when one least expected it. Below him, flying several thousand feet lower, was a special operations support aircraft, a modified C-27J Spartan configured for transport and reconnaissance. It wasn't unusual for such aircraft to share airspace with patrol units, but today something felt off. Ryan didn't know what it was at first. It was a faint tugging sensation at the back of his mind, the kind of instinct pilots joked about yet secretly trusted with their lives. His onboard display highlighted the Spartan's signature, but the radar data didn't tell him anything unusual. What captured his attention came from a quick visual pass. As he dipped his wing and swept by the C-27J, he noticed movement inside through one of the small rectangular windows. Normally, passengers sat in fixed positions, strapped in or busy with the standard duties of a mission. But one figure caught his eye, a woman, or at least someone with a slender build, seated away from everyone else. She wasn't wearing the standard issue flight gear or crew uniform. Instead, she seemed wrapped in a dark cloak-like jacket, her posture straight but tense, her head slightly down as though she didn't want anyone to get a good look at her face. That alone wasn't alarming. People sometimes preferred privacy during classified transfers. But the moment Ryan circled around again, he saw something even stranger. Every time a crew member walked near her, she subtly angled her body away, turning just enough so that the cameras mounted above couldn't catch her face. He knew those internal cameras streamed directly to the cockpit and also recorded for security archives. Avoiding them was almost impossible unless someone knew exactly where each blind spot was. And this woman seemed to know. He clicked his comms. Control, Falcon -3. Do we have updated personnel manifest for the Spartan? I'm seeing a passenger who doesn't match anything on previous lists. There was a pause. A long one. Too long. When air traffic control responded, the voice sounded calm, but Ryan heard a faint difference, an uncertainty. Falcon 3, stand by. We are checking with command. Checking with command meant one of two things. Either someone had made a paperwork error, or the passenger was part of a black-level operation that even the on-duty controllers weren't cleared for. But if it were the latter, they would have told him immediately to drop the inquiry. They hadn't. That was what unsettled him. He passed the Spartan again, this time more slowly. The woman's head abruptly tilted as though she sensed his fighter above. She didn't look out the window, but the shift in posture made it clear she was aware of him. Awareness at that level wasn't normal. Most passengers couldn't tell when a jet streaked over them at that angle. She seemed trained, hyper-alert, attentive to even the smallest changes in the aircraft's surroundings. Ryan zoomed his helmet cam to record another pass for the intelligence team, but at the exact moment his camera aligned with her window, she reached up and pulled down the privacy shade. Not casually, decisively. That confirmed it. She wasn't just avoiding the cameras, she was actively preventing identification. Inside the Spartan, tension had already begun to circulate. Sergeant Wildero, the loadmaster, stood a few feet away from the mysterious woman, watching her from the corner of his eye. He had flown dozens of missions, seen everything from high-ranking officials to undercover operatives, but he had never seen someone this intentionally concealed. He approached her with the usual professionalism, offering a polite tone meant to disarm without sounding intrusive. "Ma'am, for safety reasons, we need all passengers listed on the manifest. Could you please confirm your clearance level?" She didn't look at him. Her voice, barely above a whisper, came through like a controlled breath. "I am not to be logged. Continue your duties." Her answer was confident but dangerously vague. It wasn't a refusal, it was a command disguised as a reply. Darrow stepped back, uncertain. She spoke like someone used to authority, someone who expected orders to be followed without question. He walked toward the cockpit and knocked on the reinforced door. The pilot, Major Cole Renner, opened the small slider window. "What's the issue, Sergeant?" It's the woman in the rear compartment, Darrow muttered, keeping his voice low. She won't identify herself, sir. She dodges every camera and keeps away from the crew. She even pulled the privacy shade when the F-22 circled. Renner frowned. She's not on the manifest. No, sir. Renner glanced at the instruments, then at the security pad beside him. I'll relay this to command. He reached for the encrypted radio and sent a coded message. But before he could finish, the woman stood up from her seat and walked directly toward the cockpit door. Darrow froze. She moved with a kind of fluid control that reminded him of special forces operatives he had worked with, people trained to blend, to disappear, to strike. But she wasn't trying to intimidate anyone, she simply approached with purpose. When she reached the cockpit entrance, she didn't push the door or speak. She just stood there, waiting. Her presence alone seemed to demand an audience. Renner opened the door halfway. Ma'am, this area is restricted unless... I know exactly what it is, she interrupted quietly. Then she leaned in just enough for only Renner to hear. Whatever she whispered made his expression tighten instantly. It wasn't fear, but recognition. Yes, ma'am, he said, stepping aside. Darrow watched, bewildered. She had bypassed protocol without showing any badge, any paperwork, any authorization. Just a few words, and somehow, that was enough. Meanwhile, in the skies above, Captain Ryan Hale's instincts continued to fire. As he circled around again, he kept replaying her movements, analyzing each motion, each attempt to hide. Who was she? Why was she on a military aircraft without clearance? And why did he feel like something much larger was unfolding beneath the calm exterior of the mission? Before he could request another status update, his radar pinged with a micro alert. Someone inside the Spartan had manually disabled the feed coming from one of the internal cameras. Not malfunctioned, disabled. That was when Ryan's concern turned into full alertness. Back inside the cockpit of the Spartan, the woman took the co-pilot's seat. Renner didn't argue. He didn't question. He simply allowed her to sit, which confused Darrow even more. She removed her hood only slightly, revealing the lower half of her face, sharp, calm, framed by shadows. She stared at the navigation screen as though memorizing every waypoint. Renner cleared his throat. Ma'am, if I may ask, you may not, she answered. Not harshly, but with the weight of command. Seconds later, she leaned forward, typing a code into the encrypted panel, one that Renner had never seen before in his entire career. The panel flashed green and synchronized with something outside the aircraft. Something classified. On the Raptor above, Ryan received a sudden encrypted ping on his HUD. A code he wasn't cleared to decipher. A code that had no reason to originate from the Spartan. Control, Falcon -3. I'm getting unauthorized encrypted bursts from the support aircraft. Advise. Control responded instantly this time. Falcon 3, maintain visual. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. We're coordinating with higher command. That meant command was now aware, and worried. Ryan looked down again. The Spartan continued its course, but something had changed. He could feel it. The woman's presence, her secrecy, her avoidance of every protocol, it all pointed toward one possibility. She wasn't a threat, she was hiding from a threat, and whatever she was hiding from was big enough that even the crew around her didn't know. Inside the cockpit, the woman finally spoke again, more softly this time. There will be an incident very soon. You are not cleared for details. Your job is to keep this aircraft steady and follow the new coordinates. Renner swallowed. Ma'am, under what authority? She finally looked at him, really looked, her eyes calm but carrying a storm of experience. Under the authority, she whispered, of someone who has saved more pilots than you can imagine, Major. Someone who knows exactly what is coming. Outside, Ryan's sensors picked up an unexplained fluctuation, a faint distortion in the radar signature several miles ahead. Trouble was coming, and the mysterious passenger, whoever she truly was, seemed to be the only one prepared for it. Moments later, alarms blared. An unidentified aircraft breached restricted airspace. The F-22 squadron launched instantly, and the mysterious passenger insisted on joining the mission, shocking everyone on board. The first alarm sounded like a distorted howl echoing through the metal corridors of the Spartan. Red lights began pulsing along the ceiling, casting sharp streaks of crimson over the faces of the crew. The sudden shift from calm flight to high alert was jarring, but military personnel were trained to move before thinking. Before the second alarm finished ringing, Major Renner tightened his harness, Darrow pulled up the tactical display, and the entire mood of the aircraft transformed into urgent coordination. Outside, the sky remained tranquil, clear, deceptively peaceful, but every pilot knew that threats seldom announced themselves visually. They arrived in pings, signatures, distortions, coded flashes, any irregularity that pierced the monotony of routine. The Spartan's radar panel cracked with static before stabilizing. A new dot appeared, moving too fast to be a civilian aircraft and too erratic to belong to any registered military craft in the region. It barreled toward the restricted air corridor like a predator slicing through a field of prey. Renner whispered under his breath, "What the hell?" But before he could speak further, the woman seated beside him placed one hand on the console. The gesture was calm, controlled, and decisive, instantly drawing his attention. She looked at the incoming signal for only half a second before issuing a command. "Launch the Intercept protocols. Notify command that you are changing course. And lock this aircraft into formation mode." Renner stared at her. "Formation mode? With who?" "With the F-22s already mobilizing," she answered, as though she had received information before anyone else did. "You don't have to understand why. Just follow the sequence." He hesitated. She reached over and entered the code herself. The system accepted it, something impossible unless she possessed a clearance level higher than his own. The cockpit fell silent. Even the alarms seemed quieter, muffled behind the spinning realization that she was more than an unidentified passenger. Down below in the cargo bay, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had seen a civilian, or even a covert agent, override a pilot in flight. Darrow whispered to another airman, "Who is she?" But no one answered. No one even guessed. In the sky above, Captain Ryan Hale received the launch order through encrypted comms. The squadron's siren flashed inside his helmet, changing the mission from routine patrol to immediate response. He throttled the F-22's engines, and the twin jets roared with a power that vibrated through his bones, surging into the sky with controlled fury. His squadron, Falcon Unit, formed a precise attack diamond. The F-22 Raptors sliced through the air with predatory grace, their dark silhouettes shimmering against the bright morning light. Ryan spoke through comms. "Falcon team, maintain tight formation. We're intercepting unknown traffic heading toward restricted airspace. Weapons cold unless authorized." 4 confirmations echoed back. As they soared closer, Ryan noticed something unexpected. The Spartan was shifting altitude, adjusting course, synchronizing with the F-22s. They were aligning with Falcon Unit as if becoming part of the interception formation. But transport aircraft didn't perform combat maneuvers. They didn't sync with fighters. They didn't belong in engagements. Yet here it was. "What is that transport doing?" Ryan muttered. The Spartan drifted smoothly into position, left and slightly beneath Ryan's flank, exactly where an escort craft would fly during a coordinated intercept run. It made no sense. Inside the Spartan cockpit, Renner struggled to understand the sequence unfolding before him. "This is insane. This aircraft isn't built for this. We're not part of an intercept team." The woman didn't look at him. Her gaze remained locked on the tactical screen, reading patterns faster than the system could refresh them. "Today you are," she said. The aircraft trembled lightly as it settled into place. Darrow stepped into the cockpit doorway, gripping the frame to stay steady. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're putting us into a combat vector. We're exposed out here." She finally turned, her eyes meeting his with a chilling clarity. "You're safer beside the F-22s than you are trying to run from what's approaching." Her words sent a ripple of fear through the cabin. Not panic, fear. The kind that comes from knowing a threat isn't just close. It's inevitable. Up ahead, the unidentified aircraft burst through a layer of thin clouds. It moved like no aircraft Ryan had ever seen. Sharp-edged, angular. Its wings bent at an unnatural angle, as though engineered for maneuverability beyond standard aerodynamic theory. Its speed fluctuated unpredictably, jerking sideways in microburst before stabilizing. It traveled in a way that ignored both wind and physics. Ryan adjusted his visor. "Control, target visual acquired. That is not a commercial bird." "Confirm." Control responded, but interference crackled through their words. Something, or someone, was jamming nearby frequencies. The unknown aircraft suddenly tilted, its nose pointing straight toward the Spartan and the escorting F-22s. A direct approach. That was hostile behavior. Ryan's instincts sharpened. "Falcon team, widen perimeter. Protect the transport." On the Spartan, Renner's hands shook slightly as he tightened his grip on the controls. "Why are they targeting us? This doesn't make sense." "It makes perfect sense," the woman murmured. You're carrying something they want. What? Darrow demanded. Not what, she corrected. Who? Only then did the crew understand. She wasn't hiding from them. She was hiding from whoever was inside that aircraft. The unknown jet accelerated. Its engines emitted no flame, no smoke, just a pulsing white glow that elongated like a comet tail behind it. The sonic boom hit a second later, shaking the Spartan and rattling every loose object inside. Ryan pulled his jet into a defensive angle. Falcon team, shield posture now. The Raptors shifted instantly, forming a barrier between the Spartan and the incoming aircraft. But before Ryan could issue the next maneuver, the woman spoke into the Spartan's open communication line, without using a microphone. Falcon 3, adjust 2 degrees starboard. Your left flank is vulnerable. Her voice echoed in Ryan's helmet. He froze. That channel was encrypted, highly encrypted. Only command-level personnel could break into it. Who is this? Ryan demanded. Someone who wants you to stay alive, she answered calmly. Before he could respond, the unknown aircraft launched a burst of electromagnetic interference. It wasn't a missile, not a beam, just a wave of invisible distortion. Ryan's HUD flickered. His radar scrambled. His controls tightened as though dragged by a magnetic force. He wrestled the stick. Falcon team, brace. Unknown is using some sort of EM disruption. The Spartan shook violently. Warning lights flashed. Renner swore loudly, struggling to stabilize the plane. The woman placed both hands on the console. Hold altitude. Do not climb. Altitude shift triggers tracking. How do you know that? Renner demanded. Because I've flown against them before. The cockpit fell silent. Even Darrow felt the air thicken. Meanwhile, Ryan succeeded in regaining control by switching to manual override. He dove beneath the distortion wave and pulled into a climbing arc, positioning himself behind the unidentified aircraft. There you are, he muttered as his targeting systems recalibrated. The unknown aircraft juked sideways again with inhuman precision. It wasn't just piloted, it felt guided. The woman inside the Spartan stared out the front window, her eyes narrowing. She recognized the movement pattern. The erratic drifting, the unnatural shifts. It wasn't flying like a stolen jet. It was flying like a trained pilot. One she knew. Renner noticed her expression. Ma'am, is someone after you personally? Her jaw tightened. They're not after me. They're trying to prevent something only I can stop. Which is? Darrow asked. She responded slowly. A breach of the Strategic Air Defense Network. If that aircraft gets past this corridor, it can transmit the signal it's carrying. That signal will open ghost corridors in 15 countries. 37 stealth platforms could enter unnoticed. It's the beginning of something far larger than a single airspace violation. Darrow felt a shiver crawl down his spine. And you know this because I built the original defense grid, she answered quietly. And the pilot flying that craft knows how to break it. Ryan, still locked on the tail of the unknown aircraft, listened through the open channel. The realization hit him like a punch. This wasn't some rogue drone. This wasn't stolen tech. This was personal warfare between two people who understood secrets no military handbook could explain. The unknown aircraft suddenly flipped vertically, a maneuver physically impossible for most jets, and dived straight toward the Spartan. Ryan surged forward. No you don't. He fired a flare burst, not as a weapon but as a blinding countermeasure. The unknown jet twisted away, missing the Spartan by a hair. Inside the transport, turbulence tossed everyone sideways. Renner regained control, sweat dripping down his forehead. He glanced at the woman. What do we do now? She inhaled deeply. Now, you follow the intercept pattern I give you. You want us to fly into the fight. Darrow barked. You're already in it, she replied. She leaned forward and spoke into the encrypted comm again. Falcon 3, adjust formation. You're flying too predictably. He's reading your patterns. Ryan clenched his jaw. And you know how he flies. Yes, she whispered. Better than anyone. She entered another sequence into the Spartan's console. A small screen lit up, coordinates, timing markers, and intercept pathways. A flight plan, not for escape, for entrapment. This is how we end it, she said, her voice steady. Ryan glanced at the pattern appearing on his HUD. It was brilliant, complex, impossible for anyone who didn't understand that unknown aircraft as intimately as she did. But he followed it, because deep down, he sensed she wasn't guessing. She was planning, and the unknown pilot knew her too, well enough to realize she was no longer hiding. She was engaging. The sky tightened around them, a battle of speed, intellect, and instinct unfolding thousands of feet above the ocean. The mysterious woman no longer avoided the cameras. No longer hid her face. No longer concealed anything. Because now, the threat was here. And she was done running. In the heat of the intercept, the hidden passenger took control of a secondary console and executed advanced maneuvers no civilian could understand. The crew was stunned when she revealed she was a former Top Gun ace, operating under deep cover for a classified operation. The cockpit of the Spartan had become a storm of alarms, flashing lights, and the sharp tension of human instinct fighting against the unknown. Every display flickered between clarity and distortion as the enemy aircraft continued its unpredictable, almost unnatural movements. The frame of the Spartan shuddered as if the sky itself rejected the chaos unfolding within it. And through all of that, she moved with an unsettling calm. Her hood had fallen back earlier, revealing sharp eyes that read data faster than the screens could refresh it. Her fingers danced across the secondary flight console, a system almost never used in normal operations. Renner had barely remembered it existed. It was installed only for high-clearance mission specialists. Civilians never sat there. Even most military personnel didn't know how to use it. But she did. Her movements were precise, fluid, like muscle memory awakened after years of sleep. Each command she entered linked directly with the Spartan's auxiliary navigation system, altering the aircraft's alignment by fractions of degrees, tiny adjustments invisible to untrained eyes, but critical in aerial combat. Renner stared at her hands, unable to comprehend half of what she was doing. "Ma'am, this system isn't even active on normal flights. How are you?" "It was deactivated," she said, her voice steady. "I reactivated it. You can't just..." Darrow began. But then the aircraft jolted violently. A burst of electromagnetic ripple washed over them, shaking the Spartan like an animal caught in the jaws of something larger. The unknown aircraft traced a circle around them, glowing faintly at the edges, as if taunting the formation. She typed 3 more sequences, her face void of panic, her breathing controlled. The Spartan stabilized instantly, its shaking reduced to a low hum. Darrow's jaw dropped. "No civilian has that kind of training," he whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke for her. Outside, Ryan Hale fought to keep pace with the enemy craft. His F-22 strained under maneuvers most pilots wouldn't attempt at this altitude. But even at full throttle, he could barely match the unpredictable movements of the Intruder. Whoever was flying that aircraft, they weren't guessing. They were anticipating. And somehow, the woman in the Spartan was matching them, countering every feint, predicting every shift, guiding the transport into perfect defensive alignment. She was flying 2 aircraft at once, and only one of them had a physical stick. Ryan's voice crackled through the Spartan's calm. "Transport, who is controlling your secondary nav? That's, whatever they're doing, it's working." Darrow looked at her. "Should we tell him?" She didn't look away from the console. "I'll tell him." She tapped the comm switch. Her voice filled Ryan's helmet, unwavering and steady. "FALCON3, this is call sign Gostock." Ryan froze. The name echoed through the lineup of F-22s. A silence spread among the squadron, the kind that only occurred when legends were spoken aloud. "Gostock." Ryan breathed, barely believing it. Every pilot had heard the stories. The impossible kill ratios. The classified missions that never made the news. The engagements against advanced threat prototypes. Gostock wasn't a person anymore. She was a myth whispered in fighter squadrons across the branches. A pilot who vanished years ago under mysterious circumstances, rumored dead, rumored captured, rumored to have gone rogue. But none of those rumors matched the truth sitting inside the Spartan, typing code into a system most aircraft crews never touched. She finally lifted her gaze toward the front window, her expression firm. "I'm Gostock, former Top Gun ace, and the pilot of that aircraft was once my wingman." Darrow felt the blood drain from his face. Renner's hands froze on the throttle. Ryan's voice cracked back over the comm. "Your wingman? You mean, Spectre?" She finished. Ryan cursed under his breath. Every pilot knew that call sign too. Spectre was another legend, one who had vanished the same year Gostock disappeared, presumed gone in a mission the government never publicly acknowledged. Now he was flying the unknown aircraft. Gostock continued typing, linking the Spartan's sensors into the F-22 datanet. She spoke while working, her words short and clipped, like someone re-entering a battlefield she thought she had left behind. "He's compromised, taken, or worse, working willingly with whatever group is behind that platform." Renner gripped the control yoke so tightly his knuckles bleached. "Ma'am, if you knew this was coming, why were you hiding?" "I wasn't hiding," she corrected. I was embedded. Darrow blinked. Embedded for what? She pulled up a new interface, one Renner had never seen before. It displayed patterns, frequencies, signatures far beyond normal military classifications. A classified operation to prevent advanced stealth platforms like his from breaching global defense grids. I was undercover for nearly 5 years. Spectre was supposed to be with me, but he broke off from the mission. Or he was taken, or he switched sides. No one knows. She entered another code sequence and the Spartan's radar map expanded into a 3-dimensional sphere. Multiple ghost corridors flickered in and out, entry points hidden beneath layers of encrypted noise. He's testing the perimeter, she said. If he finds the right frequency match, he opens a corridor and dozens of hostile stealth wings will pour in. Darrow swallowed hard. So we're in the middle of a war no one knows is happening. Yes. Ryan soared alongside the Spartan. His F-22 engines roared as he stabilized formation. Ghostok, if what you're saying is true, we need to stop him now. We will, she said. But not with brute force. The unknown aircraft climbed steeply, then twisted sideways with impossible agility. Spectre's movements were too precise, too familiar. She followed every shift on the console. He's baiting you, she warned Ryan. Do not chase him into vertical climb. He'll drop a distortion behind him and crash your radar. Ryan adjusted instantly. Copy. Spectre's aircraft looped again, darting toward the Spartan. Ghostok moved faster, sending another burst of counter-commands into the system. The Spartan rolled slightly, far smoother than any transport should. Renner wasn't even touching the controls. Ma'am, he whispered, you're flying the aircraft. Only guiding it, you're still the pilot. Am I? He murmured. Spectre barreled past them. The sonic pulse erupted again, rattling everything inside the transport. Ghostok absorbed the shock, steadied her breathing, and entered another string of maneuvers. Darrow watched her in awe. This is impossible. You're fighting a stealth aircraft with a transport plane. I'm fighting him, she corrected. The plane is just the medium. Ryan's F-22 surged into position above them. His voice came in steady and controlled now. Ghostok, tell me what you need. She closed her eyes for one breath, just one, and when she opened them again, something deeper took over. A pilot's instinct, a warrior's resolve, a strategist's precision. Follow my lead, she said. I'm about to turn this entire battlefield upside down. Spectre's aircraft looped dramatically again. Its glow intensified, signaling an imminent burst of energy, one that could disable every aircraft in its path. Ghostok recognized the buildup. He's going to release the pulse. What pulse? Renner demanded. A shutdown wave. It will kill your electronics. You'll drop out of the sky. Darrow paled. Then what do we do? Ghostok typed furiously. We ride the edge of it. Ride it, Renner exclaimed. Ryan's voice echoed in her ears. Ghostok, your plan. She exhaled slowly. We push into the distortion at the exact moment the pulse releases. If we enter at the right angle, the Spartan's mass will absorb the fringe and your F-22s will stay unaffected. That's insane, Renner muttered. That's necessary, she replied. Ryan didn't argue. Tell us when. Spectre's aircraft leveled out, its engines glowing brighter than before. A humming vibration filled the air. Ghostok placed both hands on the console. Now, Renner trusted her more than he trusted physics. He followed her movements exactly as she guided the Spartan toward the trembling distortion ahead. The pulse exploded outward. Spectre's aircraft released a wave of invisible force that rushed across the sky like a silent bomb. But Ghostok had predicted it. The Spartan's nose cut into the outer edge of the pulse. The cockpit shook violently. Alarms screamed. Panels flickered. But the aircraft held. The shockwave rolled beneath the F-22s, missing them entirely. Ryan exclaimed, we made it through. Ghostok didn't celebrate. She stared ahead. Spectre's aircraft hovered, waiting. He knows I'm here, she whispered. And he's not done. Renner looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Who are you really? She finally answered fully. I was the youngest Top Gun ace in my class. I flew more interception missions than anyone in the program's history. I executed operations that will never be declassified. Then I was recruited for a black-level assignment to prevent a global aviation collapse. Darrow's mouth fell open. You're a ghost. That's why they named me Ghostok. Ryan's voice returned, steady but filled with a new respect. Ghostok, lead the way. She lifted her hands from the console. The sky darkened with the shadow of Spectre's aircraft. And she whispered, It's time to end what we started. The moment the Intruder aircraft went dark on radar and the skies finally returned to their uneasy calm, a strange stillness spread across the cockpit. It wasn't silence, not exactly. Engines still roared, comms buzzed faintly, and warning lights blinked like fading embers, but there was a shift in the air, a sense that something enormous had just ended and something even larger had begun. Every pilot in the formation remained in a state of suspended disbelief, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A single passenger, hidden, unlisted, mysterious, had not only taken control of a combat console but had outperformed even the most elite tactical officers in the squadron. Inside the support aircraft, the crew stared at her as if she had stepped out of some classified legend. Her breathing was calm, controlled, her hands still hovering near the console as though ready to take command again at a moment's notice. Her eyes tracked the formation of F-22s outside, and for a moment, there was no hint of strain or adrenaline, just the quiet poise of someone who had done this 100 times, perhaps 1,000, someone whose muscle memory belonged to the sky itself. The squadron leader's voice finally broke through the comms, rough, shaken, but steady enough to sound official. All units, hold formation. Confirm Intruder neutralized and no further hostiles on scope. One by one, the confirmations rolled in. But even with the successful end of the mission, the pilots could not stop glancing toward the support aircraft, wondering who exactly they owed this victory to. For them, the operation had turned unexpectedly dangerous the moment the unidentified aircraft breached the restricted zone. The Intruder had moved like a ghost, slipping between radar pulses, exploiting blind spots that only insiders would know. It should have taken minutes, maybe hours, to track, intercept, and neutralize it. Yet this passenger, this hidden Top Gun ace, had done it in mere seconds with tactics the Air Force had nearly forgotten existed. Inside the support aircraft, the co-pilot removed his headset and stared openly at her. "I've flown with veterans, commanders, Black Ops teams," he muttered, still breathless. "But whatever you just did, none of them could pull off maneuvers like that." She didn't look at him. Instead, she kept her gaze on the distant horizon, watching the last trace of the Intruder vanish. "You weren't supposed to see it," she said softly. "None of you were." The flight engineer swallowed hard. "Ma'am, who are you really?" She hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the burden of revealing a truth she had carried longer than any of them had been in uniform. Then, slowly, she exhaled, her voice low and steady. "Once, I was your age," she began. "Flying every sortie assigned to me, pushing jets to their limits, breaking records the moment they were set. They called me Falcon, but after my last deployment, I disappeared. Not because I wanted to vanish, but because the government needed a ghost." The crew exchanged stunned looks. The name Falcon wasn't just familiar, it was legendary. Falcon was the pilot cadets whispered about in flight school, the one instructors used as the benchmark for impossible maneuvers, the one whose final mission had been classified so deeply that even its date was redacted. She was a myth wrapped in secrecy, a phantom ace the Air Force denied ever losing. Yet here she was, alive, breathing, and sitting inside their aircraft. Before anyone could respond, the squadron leader patched through directly. "Unidentified support craft passenger," he said, struggling to maintain a tone of authority, "we need to debrief you immediately upon landing. Command wants answers. You just took operational control of an active mission." "I didn't take control," she corrected. "I saved it." Her voice was quiet, unshaken, and somehow more commanding than the official order. The squadron leader paused, caught off guard. When he spoke again, the hostility was gone, replaced with something closer to reluctant respect. "You guided us into formation cleaner than any simulation," he admitted. "I don't know how you did it. No civilian should have been capable of what we witnessed." She finally turned away from the horizon and looked at the console she had operated moments before. "I was sworn to secrecy for years. But circumstances have changed. That aircraft wasn't a random intruder. It belonged to a rogue program designed to test breach protocols in the worst possible way. They wanted to see if your squadron could handle an unknown threat. And we failed," the co-pilot whispered. "No," she said firmly. "You adapted, and you trusted your instincts. You just didn't have the data or the experience to counter that level of maneuvering." "And you did?" another crew member asked, still overwhelmed. Her answer was simple: "Because I helped design the tactics that Intruder was using." The revelation landed like a shockwave. She had designed them, not learned them, not studied them, but created them. The flight engineer leaned forward, stunned. So the intruder wasn't just breaching airspace, it was testing us using your own playbook. In a way, she replied. A classified division has been developing pseudo-autonomous strike patterns based on archived Top Gun Ace maneuvers. Mine were among them, but something went wrong. The AI wasn't supposed to activate without authorization. Someone triggered it remotely, which means this breach wasn't a drill, it was an attack on your defense protocols. The cockpit felt colder suddenly, the weight of her words settling over them like an invisible fog. If this was true, then their airspace had been compromised not by an enemy aircraft but by an internal ghost, an algorithm built from a hero's past missions. And if you hadn't been here, the co-pilot began. The intruder would have reached strike range, she finished for him. And none of your aircraft would have been able to keep up. Outside, the F-22s continued escorting them toward base, the formation tighter and more unified than ever. The pilots inside those jets were still replaying the moment she took command of the secondary console. She had guided them into a configuration no one had seen in active duty for years, a diamond spread inversion technique used only once in history, during a classified engagement. And she had done it instinctively, effortlessly, like it was imprinted into her bones. As they approached the coastline, golden light spilled across the sky, softening the tension that had gripped every aircraft only minutes earlier. The mission was over, but its implications were just beginning. Command would want explanations, debriefings, reports filled with language sterile enough to hide the truth from the public. But everyone on that flight knew the real story. They had been saved by a phantom. By a ghost from the Air Force's past. By a Top Gun ace who had given up her identity, her rank, her entire life for an operation no one else could understand. The co-pilot looked at her, still trying to wrap his mind around everything that had happened. Why reveal yourself now? He finally asked. Why break your cover? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the formation of F-22s, sleek, magnificent, glinting in the sunset as though saluting her. Only when the horizon turned crimson did she speak. Because your squadron needed me today, she said. And because the threat is growing faster than any of you realize. The breach wasn't just a test, it was the first warning. Her words sent a ripple of unease through the entire crew. What kind of warning? The engineer asked carefully. She exhaled slowly, the weight of classified knowledge pressing against her chest. Someone out there is trying to replicate what we once guarded. They're using stolen flight patterns, stolen technology, stolen strategies. And today, they nearly succeeded. The support aircraft dipped slightly as it began its descent toward base, and the F-22s tightened formation around it as though shielding her with invisible armor. The co-pilot frowned. So what happens now? She looked at him, not with secrecy this time, but with certainty. Now, I come out of the shadows. Because if the enemy is resurrecting ghosts of the past, then the Air Force needs someone who can fight them. He stared at her, replacing doubt. You mean, you're coming back? A small, confident smile touched her lips for the first time. If they'll have me. The landing lights aligned ahead, glowing in the twilight, guiding them downward. The radio crackled with ground control instructions. But even with all the familiar sounds of routine procedures filling the cockpit, every person on that aircraft knew they would never forget what happened in the sky. They had witnessed the return of a legend. A hidden passenger who had stepped out of anonymity. A Top Gun ace who had chosen, after years of silence, to reveal the truth, not to boast, not to reclaim fame, but to save lives. When the wheels touched down and the aircraft rolled across the runway, the crew exchanged quiet glances. They knew the world would never hear the real story. The official report would soften everything, omit her name, bury the details beneath layers of clearance. But none of that mattered. Because they knew. Because they were there. Because they had seen the moment the fate of the mission, and perhaps something far greater, hinged on a woman no one was supposed to know existed. And as the engines powered down and the roar faded into a gentle hum, she unbuckled her restraints, stood, and whispered a final thought that sank into each of them like a promise and a warning combined. This was just the beginning. And they believed her.